David, did you want to start off? Do you have something funny
No,
that you
no,
that you
look,
have to say?
man. Look, when we're off, you told Grant to feel free to make fun of me and you gave some disparaging remarks. And really what I'm excited about is you preempted that conversation with some super fake news, right? Like it was uh you trying to deflect what is natural for every guest that we've had and for me, and that is to look at your face and to then just honestly critique it, which typically is pretty funny, right? It's
Yeah,
pretty funny to give
so
our
funny.
true impression of your personality, which I think your personality shines through your face perfectly.
I probably do have some droopy eyes. I had a
Yeah.
3 a.m. wake up this morning, flying back from Dallas actually to get back here to Colorado to get back in time for this podcast. So, Grant, hey, we're excited about the conversation today. Been looking forward to this for a while. For our audience, if you could just give a little bit of background about who you are and what you do.
I'm Grant Moise. I am the CEO of Dallas News Corporation and the publisher of the Dallas Morning News. We have at Dallas News Corporation, we're a public company, so I'm always careful with what I say financially, but try to give people as much of a kind of a look behind the curtain because I think what we do for a living, especially from a journalism standpoint, and trying to be the anti-fake news, to y'all's banter. Um, Look, ultimately, we're just trying to stay rooted in why it's important, what it really means to society. And so, I'm thrilled we're here. I appreciate you guys having me. And I think I started telling you all a little bit. I started my career in Denver at News 4 at the CBS affiliate there, and such great people. And but look, I've been just been in this business since I was the ripe age of 15 years old. So 35 years later, I'm still at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been excited about. So Stu told me he's like, "Hey, man, we got this guest coming in a couple months, and this is who you are." And I got really excited about it because I'm a big. I actually just having a conversation this morning with somebody connected with on LinkedIn, and we dove very quickly into the realities of life versus the perceptions and why we make decisions and what it looks like. And we were talking specifically around faith, right? And what it means to say you're Christian and then to live a Christian life. And unfortunately, there's a huge dichotomy there. And I think a lot of it goes into our lack of ability to critically think. And it's our lack of a desire to dive into source material, in that context, the Bible, but even diving into, the life of Paul could be just a very informative thing. And so we then very quickly went to this idea around the information that you receive, you consume, and how your opinions are formed. And my position is we have really moved away from a place of just even the ability to critically think, to even consider the other side and let the other side inform our own beliefs, whether it changes them or more deeply roots them in truth and all these things, right? And so I'm excited about this conversation because you're right, you're in the world of a very polarizing industry in general. And I'm curious how you navigate, you said your desire or it's important that people get fed truth, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just curious, overarching, big view, your views of the media in general, and then specifically how we can get to a place. So go from there to moving to how can we get to a place of being more informed by truth and not biases that we just want reinforced.
Yeah, boy, we could, and again, I'm glad we got time because this is you can start peeling back this onion and all of a sudden you start finding there's so many layers and nuances to this. Um, look, the state of where we are, so Gallup polls has been tracking trust in the media for over, I think, almost 80 something years. And the peak of trust in the media was like in the late 1960s. And here we are, all these years later, and the Gallup poll so it used to be that about 66% of people said they completely trusted the media. So, right, so that was the peak, 66, 67% in the late 1960s. Here we are in 2025, and 32% of people said they trust the media, right? So we're less than half of where we were, right? So some of the things, David, to your question that I'm often thinking about is how much of this did we do to ourselves? How much of this is just the changes in technology? I mean, look, we all know in the 1960s, there was no Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, right? None of this stuff, but also there was no cable news. So some of the things are things that I think that the technology world of social media and the internet have done to society to impact a trust in media. But also there's things where we've done ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean those of us who are in the world of professional journalism. You know, and look, I put the CNNs, the Fox Newses, the Newsmax, the OANs, the MSNBCs, all these, you know, the cable news channels, unfortunately, they have contributed to a lack of trust in the media because they've decided to pick a lane, right? And so that's when the professionals chose to pick a lane. That's very different than when the algorithms from Meta picked a lane for us based on our Facebook feeds, our Instagram feeds. Well, we didn't consciously, you know, I mean, look, I kind of make fun of my dad and kind of this older, not make fun, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like turn the cable news off. Like you got to turn it off. Because they're choosing to turn it on and flip to that channel, as opposed to my kids. I've got three teenagers. They didn't choose to flip to that channel. They just chose to turn on the phone. And then the social media is feeding them an algorithmically driven train of thought. They're not getting, David, to your point too, both sides. They're not opening their mind because they didn't even consciously know that they were getting fed a pretty narrow perspective of news and information. So, you know, I think about that as a baseline, which is okay, where is society willfully entering into a narrow lens? And then where is unfortunately big tech more responsible for, no, this wasn't willfully. This is, we just don't know that these technology algorithms are taking us into a tighter corner than we're even aware of. So, you know, I don't know. But that's how I see the landscape.
It's so interesting, Grant. You know, I would say that I'm probably in the corner of just stopping watching, listening, reading news altogether because my dad, my parents are the ones that watch Fox News and only Fox News, and then they come and they have to sit at the dinner table and just like become like an echo chamber, you know, a parrot of what they were listening to on Fox News, and I'm just like, guys, I don't want to hear it, right? Like, and I've gotten like siloed myself like away from it all, which isn't really good either. Um, so how does someone, you know, like you and Dallas Morning News, how do you battle that? How do you get on the front end of that to get ahead of, you know, the direction we're headed?
Yeah, you know, it's such a good question, Stu. And let me touch on that last one you said, because the biggest fear I have is then the apathy. Because so many people are like, yeah, just turn it off. Like, oh my gosh, it's filling my, you know, it's in or the dinner conversation from someone who's just feeding themselves with either the right or the left or what have you. But that's my biggest fear because people are like, oh my gosh, I can't take the news anymore. It's too dark. I mean, I'm even sitting at church on Sunday, and my pastor, who I know really well, you know, he's like, yeah, but boy, the news is so hard. I was like, wait, hey, I'm right here. That, you know, but look, there's some truth to that, right? But you know, so what are we doing differently? You know, one of those things. So we planted a flag about 5.5 years ago, what we called the American Middle. And so we did a big, and we can get into why is there news and opinion. But look, newspapers have traditionally had a news portion of their content and opinion. I can get into that if you guys want to, but I think what we've chosen to do with opinion is plant a flag again almost 6 years ago to say, look, we want to be an advocate for the American middle. And let's because we were worried that the 10% on the right and the 10% on the left were getting a lot of the attention. And we were like, but hang on, most people are a gradation from the center. And even when you think about the most difficult topics that exist in society, I mean, think about abortion, think about guns, think about when these topics, about 2/3 of people are saying, you know what? I think that there are, again, I won't get into too much, but there, everybody's really saying there's gradations from the center. And if we started from the center out, then we can have those dinner table conversations, Stu, that you want to have with your folks about, well, I kind of see the guns issue this way. But okay, maybe the person I'm sitting with sees it that way. But then when you start that conversation, hey, well, tell me, what am I missing? Tell me a little bit more about why you feel that way. We planted this flag and we have written well over 100 editorials and had outside contributors in to talk about the fact that if we start the conversation from the middle and work our way outward, that society can be a much more pleasant place. And we can go sit at a dinner party and have a conversation with people we don't know, or even with people we know well. But let's just open our mind to hearing from them and how do they perceive it. And so that's one way we've done it. Another way we've done it is we've started to put a why this story matters box in our most like our investigative journalism, our enterprise journalism, and say, look, this is why we've spent a lot of our time and resources covering this story. And let us show you behind the curtain what those who made the decisions of why to cover this complex topic. Here's why we did it. Here's why it's important to our country. Here's why it's important maybe just to the state of Texas or to North Texas. But we're trying to kind of, is I think one of the greatest editors maybe in the history of newspapers, a gentleman by the name of Marty Barron said, he was like, show your work, right? We all remember when we were kids and our teachers were like, well, show your work, because otherwise I don't know how you got to the answer. I love it when Marty preaches that, because to tell journalists, show your work, or lift the curtain. And so we even do an entire newsletter called Inside the Newsroom that my editor sends out to say, hey, here's what we did this month. Here's why we did it. Here's what our motives were. Because otherwise it was like, oh, I know your motives must have been this or that. And we're like, we'll just tell you what our motives were. And so we're just trying to be a lot more transparent, in the way that we're covering news, and that American middle flag we're planting. Because, I mean, look, people are always going to have a perception of, oh, the liberal media or whatever. I was like, I don't want us to be thought of as a liberal media outlet nor a conservative outlet. I want us to be thought of as a place where people can go, have their mind opened to various opinions. And when I'm speaking in Christian circles, I'm always like, look, I'm a Christian. I'm a very proud Christian. And I'm like, frankly, I think a lot of what we do for a living, and David said it at the beginning on the topic of what are the sources, whether it's the Bible's your source. I've got great Jewish friends and family where, the Torah is their source, but I'm like, you have to have a source of information that you're always going back to. Otherwise, what is the foundation of our society, right? I mean, society starts to feel real sketchy real quickly without some common truths, and especially, look, as we all hear, I mean, look, we just believe, that the Bible is our source of truth. But I think there's something in the media too of saying, boy, if you just have no source of truth, then I think our society, and it's why it's feeling as kind of anxious as I feel like society feels right now, because there's this lack of trust and a lack of transparency. And so we're trying to do our small part here in North Texas, but it's hard.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of my cynicism coming out, and it's the bar is so low,
Mm.
meaning someone just has to like get a phone and record an opinion, and then it's somehow worthy of listening to, and then even worse, spitting that opinion out, right? And as Christians too, I feel like it's an we should have an obligation, and this is the dichotomy of living and sorry, living and just claiming. We should feel a deep obligation to be in the word. It's awesome to have a source document. It's awesome to have to show your work, or to have things that you could show your work against. And then I think it's an indictment to not read it, to not show your work, to not have a basis, a foundation of anything outside of your opinion. And it's so fascinating to me that the bar has been lowered so low. I mean, that's my first question when someone wants to talk about the Bible. I'm like, awesome. Love the topic. It's amazing. Have you read it? No. Okay, then I don't really know how to have this conversation. Like, it's not worth my time. You didn't put any effort into your opinion. So let's not do that. And I'm just curious, with that context, uh, why, I was thinking about this the other day, and I love how you highlight the American middle. I was thinking through there were some House bills here in Colorado, just pretty radical stuff, and on kind of both sides, but more leaning super liberal. And again, I say that with caution because I'm not a political person. It's not, I don't look at things through those lenses necessarily. But it was just very radicalized, the language, not because it was liberal, just because it was radical. And my mind and my heart went to this place of, gosh, the people like me far outnumber the people on both sides. Why are we so silent? Like this stuff would never have any ground to flourish if we were just like, no, that extreme, right and left, those are really both dumb. And most of us don't live in either one of those. And so I'm just curious from your perspective and your unique place doing this for so many years. I mean, you said you'd done it, I thought you were maybe in your 35, 36 years old tops. So I was surprised to hear that timeline. But I'm just curious, like from your perspective, why I feel like we should absolutely be over to overwhelm both of the radicalized views and be like, you guys be quiet. This is the path we're going on. And it doesn't get the headline.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really it's a good point. I think it's almost like what Stu was talking about with that desire for kind of the apathy of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to turn it off, right? The cable news, what have you, the Instagram algorithm, whatever we want to almost just like to get some peace of mind. The problem is, David, people are turning off voting. And so, especially in primaries, I mean, our biggest problem, and I don't know where it is in Colorado, but I will tell you, for example, we just had municipal elections here for city council people. It's not a mayoral election. 8% of people turned out to vote. And I mean, the problem is, and that was there's not a primary in the municipal elections here in Texas. It's just one, you just show up like it's the general election and 7 to 8% of people are showing up to vote. That's where we're getting into trouble because then there's apathy in the voting, in voters. And like people don't forget the greatest, I mean, we got a lot of gifts in this country, but a democracy is a gift, right? I mean, we're given the gift to show up and choose who's going to be our president, who's going to be our governor, who's going to be our mayor. But when so many people don't take advantage of that gift that we have in a democracy, that's what's causing the problem of why these real niche issues get so much life to them because they get that primary voter so worked up. They know who's going to show up to vote because people's laziness as a voting populace, and it doesn't matter if you're in Colorado or Texas or Kansas or Florida, it's all over this country. People are just like, oh yeah, that's somebody else's problem to worry about. I'm like, oh my gosh, we live in this country where we're given such a gift of the ability to have our voice heard, and people say, oh, it doesn't matter anyway. It's already predetermined. It's like the more people think that way, we just find ourselves dealing with little niche issues or like, oh my gosh, do we have to read an LGBTQ headline one more time? Do we have to talk about, this going on, I mean, and it's like, oh my gosh, why do we talk about these things like that when it's only like 6% of the US population, when there's a massive part of the population, but we're not talking about that everyday bread and butter issue that will impact you all in Denver or me here in Dallas. But it goes back to some apathy.
This might be a tough question, but you know, Christianity, we talked about, us living on truth, and for the three of us, we believe in Jesus, and we go to the Bible. And that truth used to be in our education system. It used to be in the newspapers. It used to be in media, but it's gone away. And now it's like almost, if it comes up, it causes angst and arguments. Like
Mm.
where does that fit in today's media? How does Christianity get placed back in if it can, if it
Yeah,
is
you
there a
know
place
what?
for it?
You know what's interesting is I'll give you a couple things. One, let's go back to those Gallup stats I was talking about earlier, where
Yeah,
trust in the media is at an all-time low and it was in the highest in its 60s. Ironically, Stu, that was the exact same pattern of when the most people participating in organized religion was as well. So I mean,
that's interesting.
yeah, organized religion right now, and I do not have those stats as readily available, but I know because when I'm speaking in Christian environments, I'm like, trust in the media is at an all-time low. But isn't that kind of also odd that participation in organized religion, I don't know
Mm,
if it's at an all-time low, but it's pretty low
right.
right now. And then you talk about, well, trust in government is at an all-time low. Trust in higher education, as we're all reading, especially this week with every whatever the latest Harvard or Columbia headlines are. I mean, it's just like we got trust issues everywhere. But when I think about it through a Christian lens, um, it's interesting because to me, I think I always tell people, like especially in Christian settings, like I got into this business um, because I really wanted to do something important and I wanted to do something that I felt like was contributing to society and yes, I make a good living and I've got this wonderful position, but at the end of the day, I kind of put my head on the pillow and say, what did I do today? And I think there's an interesting part where some of my Christian friends are like, oh, well, Grant, you should just go start a Christian media company. Or why don't you just go? And I'm like, no, like this should be, if we're doing what we're doing correctly, then what we're trying to do is go back to exposing truth. That's what journalists do, right? Especially investigative journalism is going into the hardest, darkest places and exposing truth and bringing it to light, right? And we all know what salt and light means, at least in my opinion. I think the beauty of Christianity is you want to be that salt and light to the world, right? You want to be that lamp and you don't want to have anything kind of putting any darkness over that lamp. Let's just let it shine. And so I feel like I've got this ability. We reach over 5 million people a month on our website. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go just launch a little niche media company. I want to bring the light to the masses. And but at the same time, I don't I don't know kind of what that is going to mean. And to me, I just, again, because I've got employees of every belief system known to man, or just those who don't. And so, but I just focus on what our job is to do is to be fair, balanced, and expose the truth. And I don't, in my again, obviously, I'm not shy talking about it with you all, right? But I don't do that inside the building. I don't think it's really appropriate. But I'm happy to do it at any other time. And I will tell you what I've done subtly. Um, we've got a great faith writer that we hired here at the Dallas Morning News, Adrian Ashford. And Adrian, we just added this faith beat like 2 years ago. It is one of the most successful beats we have in terms of audience engagement. And it's really cool to see, right? Because we know that faith is a foundation. And look, I realize I'm in the Bible Belt here in Texas, but what I just love is I love just watching the statistics of how many people are reading it and how many people are sharing Adrian's coverage and how many people are, and I'm like, it's cool, right? It's just like that, but it also just reminds you that people, even though the participation in organized religion may be low right now, the interest level of society is high. And so I'm just hopeful that, look, we're going to bring people back to, just back to the Lord and back to just thinking about um, how do we do what's right and what's good and how do we help have a better society by people just being salt and light. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, look at like some of the musicians, the Brandon Lakes and the Forrest Franks and those guys kind of making like the top pop charts, right? And it's Christian music. I think it's really cool to see. But
Yeah.
I love that, Grant. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Or yeah, like I love watching like a Scotty Scheffler,
Yeah.
playing golf, strong Christian. Now, and Scotty, I think, is doing a really nice job with, I mean, obviously he's the best golfer in the world. But I think he's done a really nice job of just kind of walking the walk rather than feeling like he always has to kind of throw it out there. I think that's really kind of some of what I'm trying to emulate, of just saying, look, let's just be solid and steady and consistent and just try to bring that light. So, but yeah, I love
Well,
your
I
idea.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that, Grant. And I want to encourage you in that as well. I think a lot of Christians they run away and seek solace and protection or whatever in these Christian organizations, Christian schools, Christian this, Christian that. I heard a different perspective. Somebody left Colorado. They were telling me this story. Left Colorado because of all the in their view, just things that were happening in Colorado were not in alignment with their faith. And they went down south, Bible Belt, and this individual said, I got them all in the Christian thing and moved to the Bible Belt, and it was all Jesus, at least in word, it was all Jesus all the time. And he said, what I saw down there, this is his story. This is not I'm not supporting this either way. This was his story. He said, I saw my children becoming very comfortable and lazy in their
Mm.
faith when we moved and went into all these institutions. And he said, then they moved back. He's like, when we were in Colorado, my kids were, and me and my kids were in the fight. We were in the fight. We were actively engaging with our faith, and we were kind of the contradiction to what, and not in a bad way, even their relationships. They were the light to a lot of people in their life. And he said my kids were sharp and they got dull. And so we came back to Colorado because I wanted my kids sharp. And I was like, man, what a fascinating idea. And so I want to encourage you because I believe, as we all do, truth is truth. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks, right? Truth is truth. I love how Rick Warren, he phrased it. He's like, hey, if you don't think there are norms in truth, try to get on the freeway the opposite direction and see what happens. He's like, there are truths, and you will immediately recognize the mistake of your error in your ways by going the wrong way on the freeway, because the truth is that traffic is supposed to go this way. And so it's the idea that you guys, your desire, which is across faiths, even those that don't have faith, is for truth, that in and of itself, I believe, will drive people to God because He is the truth, and we believe that. And so there's a beautiful way that you're doing that. So I highly encourage you to not do a Christian a Christian newspaper,
Well,
whatever.
no, David, I appreciate you saying that. And look, I kind of come to that. I love your analogy too, because I also know people who've been like, oh, I had to move to where my people are, we know people who've done that. But I come by it naturally. Look, I was raised in a Jewish home. And so, I mean, I was bar mitzvahed at 13 years old and had my dad's side of my family is Jewish and my mom's side of my family is Christian. So I naturally have this appreciation for such exposure to both these religions when I was growing up. And it also, I think, helps me, David, where I'm always naturally just saying, hey, look, I've got a much broader perspective because of the way I was raised, because of the people I'm friends with, because I never want to put myself, into a narrow echo chamber. And I've, come to, my own belief system over time. But I also just always encourage everyone of just saying, look, we've also got to spend time listening to one another. And I love your idea of saying, hey, I kind of that idea of they kind of went to too safe and too comfortable of a place. Because to me, look, the world, and let's even go back to the politics of it, right? You got the right, you got the left, but when people are going to stop having the conversation to understand each other, oh my gosh, right? That's where we've just got a real problem. Because then people are like, oh, I don't want to associate with, and again, that's political, it's racial, it's religious. I mean, we got all kinds of things in our world that can separate people and put them into small lanes. But ultimately, we need the fabric of our total society to, um, to come together. Not get further apart. And I see it through my kids. As I said, I got three teenagers, and sometimes they look at like, people, so I'm 50, and they look at people in our general age range, and they're like, man, you guys just don't get it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think my kids are right.
They're right.
Like,
Yeah,
Yeah,
what
they're
is
right.
totally.
wrong with you guys? You guys
It's
are like
true.
acting like the world's coming to an end. And if I hear you talk about one more politician for 10 more minutes, they're like, guys, just live your life. But they're right.
Well, and one thing that was highlighted recently, and sorry, I know you have an amazing question, but one thing that was highlighted to me recently through stats, it was there's a guy down here in Colorado, the CEO of Jake Bland is his name, the CEO of Youth for Christ. And he gave this amazing presentation. And in it, he highlighted a couple points that just have stuck with me. And one of them was, hey, we need to look at this generation differently, these young ones, because we're like, you're entitled, you're sucked into screens. He's like, let me give you an ulterior, a different perspective.
Yeah.
He said they're one of the most curious and the most likely generation of in recent memory to be willing to change their position because they'll listen, they're curious, and they're like, that's a great point. I'm willing to change my opinion. They're one of the most likely to do that. Definitely right now in the generations that are alive currently. And he said, and consider we all want to highlight how none of them go to church. He said our society is so postmodern Christian that we're pre-Christian. We're effectively pre-Christian. He said when you look at the field that Jesus described, they were a pre-Christian society and it caught fire, right? And it grew from Jesus's time. And he's like, we're kind of back to a pre-Christian with the numbers that we see, and they're hungry and they're smart and they're curious. He's like, we should be encouraged. So to your kids, your kids being your kids, it's a fascinating dynamic that we are not embracing who they are, but they are very fertile field for truth, right? And again, truth will especially in the name of truth, it will go far beyond us trying to be like, no, Jesus is truth, and here's the Bible, and you're gonna eat it, and we're gonna shove it in your face. No, like just give truth. And then what's crazy about what I've found with my neighbors, a lot of my neighbors, most of my neighbors not Christian, we try to have a lot of people over and just do life and have fun and serve and feed. Um, but it becomes Dad talked about Jesus way more just because the curiosity around like a question of simple question of why do you want why is it important to you to have people over to your house? Oh, well, look, man, we're all children of God. We love Jesus. I love you guys. It's amazing to have you here. And those conversations have been really interesting, but it's simply around the foundation of trying to live in a truth.
Mm,
There's
it's
not a
awesome.
great question there. It's just
No, no, no. I mean, but look, to your point on the younger generation, I think their authentic interest and open-mindedness and being sponges. I love that about this generation. I think it's awesome.
Grant, I remember growing up as a kid, my stepdad would Sunday morning drive down to the local HEB, open up the little newspaper stand. And David, HEB is like the popular grocery store in
Dude,
Texas.
it changed my life. I was exposed to HEB,
Yeah,
Bucky's. These are things that
Bucky's. Yep, yep.
people not from Texas have
They don't
never
know about.
experienced. And both of them, I was like, "What's HEB?" And my Texas buddy's like, "Dude, you've never been to an HEB." And so I
Hot
got to
spot.
experience HEB. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so my stepdad would go every Sunday morning, like every Sunday morning, would go down, get the Dallas Morning News, which was like, that thick, and sit down at the couch all Sunday morning, read his coffee, and like take hours reading through the Dallas Morning News every single Sunday. And like, does that even exist anymore? Like, we're in this
Oh yeah.
digital, we're in this digital age now where I think what like the average is like 7 seconds you have to capture somebody's attention, for someone to read a post or read an article or something like that. So how have we gone from, hours reading, half an inch or a half 6 inches of like a newspaper, right? to having to go from like 7 seconds to like get someone's attention.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so interesting, Stu. So yeah, we still publish the print edition 7 days a week.
yeah.
It is, we're 96 pages on a Sunday. It's not as big as it was, as you were talking about, when
Not
you're
96 pages is smaller.
it's smaller, but I mean,
Oh,
still, but
dude.
96 pages. We've got one of the biggest Sunday newspapers in the country. And what's amazing, and then so in the other days of the week, we're averaging about 32, 33 pages a day. But if what's interesting is we study every 5 years, we study how much time does the average print reader spend with the Dallas Morning News? And it's about 29 to 30 minutes a day. And then we study how long is the average digital reader spending with the Dallas Morning News. And it's when they visit, it's about 50 seconds.
Wow.
29 minutes, 50 seconds. When you can only imagine the age, right? The median age of a print reader is 64. So then median age of digital, let's just call it 41, 42. Again, when we think of our kids, but that's also why the difficulty of this new generation, as David was saying, there's a lot of awesome stuff to this new generation. But the problem is they're a mile wide and they're about a quarter inch deep, as opposed to our parents' generation, which was only about 100 yards wide. But boy, did they go. I mean, the depth of knowledge. And that's one of those things with younger journalists here at the morning news or my kids. I'm always like, double click, double click. And oh, why? Why? Oh, but Dad, you heard this about Russia and Ukraine. I go, no, 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 tell me more about that. What exactly did that mean? What was the example of peace talks? Uh, versus to your point, when you're spending an hour and a half and you're reading not only every article, but you're going all the way into them. And look, Axios is a great example of an awesome, digital media company who basically they said the attention span is too short now for people to read the full article. So I'm just going to tighten it. I'm going to just make it really short and I'm going to give them snippets and bites of it, which is good, right? You got to meet people where they are, but there is something about, especially with that print edition, there's no push alerts coming at you. Your buddy's not texting you, seeing if you want to go play golf in an hour, and you're like, oh God, I gotta go. I mean, you just have that quiet space. And to me, it's no different than like, look, because like I like reading my hard copy Bible, but sometimes when I'm on vacation and I'm reading my Bible app, but I'm like, oh my gosh, but then the texts start coming in and the push notifications or the calendar invites, and we need to quiet our minds, find that, that we call it at our church your first 15, and just quiet that mind. But there is something more about our parents' generation just having, they didn't have the technology distractions, but they also just allowed themselves to settle into that routine. And I'm glad, I'm really happy that we still print as many, we print over 60,000 copies, every day. But it's also because that older generation's like, no, I don't need it on my phone. I don't need it on my tablet. I just want it in this format with my coffee. I
So
love that.
good. It's so good. Yeah, I actually, because I see it, I saw it for me. Not, this isn't for anybody else, but for me, I saw it as such a spiritual issue. I use the app to as a purely as a tracking mechanism to tell me what to read that day for a plant, but I cannot. I've stopped completely reading anything on my phone because I was so, even when I'm like do not disturb, stuff still I don't even understand how it gets through, but it just
Oh, they
does.
get
Like
you.
dude, I set everything so tight and it's still like, well, yeah, but you didn't set your calendar on these 17 different variations. I'm like, dude, you're killing me. But it was such a spiritual issue on something I said was a priority in the priority in my life that I've gone completely hard copy Bible because it had, but it's fascinating that you highlight that and the disparity in the time. Not surprising, but it is pretty fascinating around just how willing how willing we're go to go deep, and it's just that willingness is going away. And I'm curious, and I don't know, this may be an impossible question to answer, but I'm curious on your thoughts around it. How do we build the ability to critically think in ourselves and in our kids? Like how do we get to a place where being a mile wide and an inch deep is something that we don't desire, and we can really push that down because I think that's to our
Mm,
detriment, right? Having no
yeah.
depth is to our detriment.
You know what? It's such a good question. So David, I in this role I have, I get to do a lot of commencement speeches, and I love it because I get to kind of speak to this new generation in a confined period of time. And one of my favorite commencement speeches is what my mom used to tell me, which is, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." And she used to say it all the time. And what I've done, because look, we know whoever our friends are, whoever, even at our, even as adults, your friends can keep steering you down a bad path or to a better path, but who you choose to surround yourself with influences who you become. And I've evolved that into show me your sources and I'll show you your future, because so many people, to your one of you made this point, a little while towards the beginning of this podcast, which was people said, "Oh, well, did you hear about blank?" And they're quoting it as if it's the most well-sourced thing. And it may or may not be true, but they heard it and then somebody shared it, so they think it's true. And I always try to encourage this new generation because look, they didn't grow up, with just four broadcast networks. They didn't grow up with a parent that they were watching, reading that paper like Stu's, family for hours on a Sunday morning. But I always try to tell them, I'm like, if you don't know who your sources are, and then you're going to start to create a frame of your mind and a belief system with no foundation to it in any kind of truth or fact. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, you not only does society become scary, but they become a scary person because they've got all these strong beliefs that are not rooted in any kind of truth or fact. And that's a scary. So that whole kind of show me your sources and I'll show you your future. Because I'll give you guys one last thing. When I go speak at college classes too, I always say, I always love starting the class by saying, what are your favorite sources of news? And I get YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And I'm like, whoa, 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 time out. That's not a source. That is a platform that delivered another source to you. And then, and again, if I'm in a journalism class, it's different. They get it. But then I'm like, what are sources? And they're looking at me, they go, oh, like ESPN, NBC, you know, Fox News, Wall Street Journal. I'm like, okay, there you go. That's the source. That's who originated the content. But I was like, you got to go back to who originated content, not what is the platform that redistributed it. And so I think, David, that kind of goes back to the heart of I really want this new generation, and frankly, even all of us. I mean, it doesn't matter how young you are, right? We're all, because of these phones that are, an appendage of ours these days, we're all easily influenced because something got shared or somebody told us, at the gym that morning, and we are like, oh my gosh, did you hear about blank? But it's like, boy, if people would just go say, show me your sources, and now what's the source, and scrutinize it more, I just think we'd all be happier people.
Well, and I love what you said because it really enforces the idea of be curious, ask questions, right? And not only ask questions like ourselves, ask where I'm getting this information, but man, it's fascinating because I have family members too who will be like, "Oh, did you hear this, that, and the other?" And I now I'll look it up. I'll look it up and be like, "Wow, you actually that was a hoax." Like one recently was a hoax, and this person in my life was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, no, "This literally was a hoax." And you're mad about it. It elicited emotion. You actually had a response to this, and it was fake.
Yeah.
And it was very easily, it was very easy for me. It was 30 seconds to find that it was fake. And how many hours have you spent letting this just control your thought cycle? It's pretty fascinating. It's pretty fascinating. So I love that idea,
And it happens all the time.
dude, all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. And it's pretty sad. But I think I love that idea. I want to take that to my kids and just tell them, I think it's that in and of itself is a great mechanism to say, hey, my challenge to you guys is when you guys are talking through this stuff, just ask, hey, what's your source? and make a determination based off of that. That's
Yeah.
really good.
Or all of you jump on Google, find a reputable source when you get on there to figure out, oh, it's not true. It's just not.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you all one more data point. And then you got Gen AI, right? Here's the next new generation of, oh my gosh, it's scary. So 1,100 generative AI websites have been launched in the last 18 months. No human oversight.
That's crazy.
None. None. Um, and what's amazing about it is now there's just things where it's like bots are creating content, and because they can scrape it from anywhere and everywhere, the amount of sources is just growing exponentially. And it used to be that there was, look, it was happening in our presidential elections where people in Russia, or North Korea were trying to kind of go create disinformation, intentionally putting bad information to try to influence the outcome of elections. But now we just have these Gen AI websites that are just spinning up hundreds of pieces of content a week. No human oversight. They don't even really know what they're creating, and it's just more and more things that people can find. And so the problem's going to get worse, unfortunately, I think, before it gets better, unless people start to scrutinize sources.
You have some challenges ahead of you, Grant. I applaud you for your efforts. You're doing some good work, and I appreciate the time that you've spent with us. This has been a very interesting conversation. It's been fantastic. We could probably go for another hour. I have a whole list of questions, but we'll honor your time. Where can people find out more about you? Obviously, the Dallas Morning News. Like, what's the best place that they can kind of get plugged into everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, dallasnews.com is our website. It's where, I think hopefully and again, we're covering things that just really matter, to the state of Texas. But I think if you go to the opinion section on our site too, and you really want to kind of follow some of the American middle, it's right there at the top of the opinion section. You can just we can literally, you can just go scroll and see all the different types of topics we've tried to cover, just kind of, as we said, try to turn down the temperature a little bit and turn down the drama and kind of bring the truth and let the truth bubble up to the surface and let people have healthy conversations, not people wanting to leave and go yell at each other.
Love it, David. Stop yelling at people, dude.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I'm a big yeller. I go out and
Yeah,
I'm actually gonna go yell at
be
this
nice,
person right
man.
here in the office when we're done here. I mean, she's sweet. Dana's super sweet, but I'm gonna yell at her. Um, Grant, thank you so much. I love this conversation. I love the just what you guys are doing as far as trying to get to truth, because there is truth, and we've gotten there's some quote, I can't think of the exact words, but it was around, if you want to really take down a society, just have that society question truth, right? And it's pretty fascinating just to see that in execution. But just really want to applaud you and your mission, your effort to that American middle piece is really, really appealing. It's unfortunate you guys are in Dallas and in Texas, and that's your focus. I would love for you to come up here and maybe bring that up here. But joking aside, it's an amazing mission, and I love the honor around bringing truth to all your readers, and I think you've gained a new reader today, at least one, at least one. Stu doesn't read. It's a challenge for him. It's very difficult, and that's not an indictment on anybody who
TikTok
reading is
only.
hard, right? But Stu's more of he likes the Insta life. So
TikTok.
I'll take 1.5. That's
there you
good.
go. Hey, you give Stu more credit than I did. You gave him a half. That's good.
It's been fun, Grant. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you, Grant.